Nixon now! Impeach Nixon now! Impeach!
The Watergate crisis was closing in on Richard Nixon. The public mood turned against him when he tried to kill off the Watergate investigation and sacked the special prosecutor in charge of the case. Now he was threatened with impeachment. For the first time in 100 years, a serious demand to strip the president of office hit Congress.
When I got to my office in Washington, the flood of mail that was in there, telegrams and telephone calls, was impossible to be able to count. And the question was, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And impeach, impeach, impeach.
It wasn't going to be easy. Peter Rodino, a little-known congressman, chaired the committee that had to take on the president. And Nixon could still count on a lot of support in Congress.
I would like to add a personal word with regard to an issue that has been of great concern to all Americans over the past year. I refer, of course, to the investigations of the so-called Watergate affair. I believe the time has come to bring that investigation and the other investigations of this matter to an end. 1 year of Watergate is enough.
This is one of the machines that Nixon had installed to record his office conversations. His tape recordings became the evidence that would establish whether the president was party to the conspiracy to obstruct justice in the Watergate case. The courts had ordered him to hand over the first of the tapes the Watergate special prosecutor had demanded. The president's attorney, Fred Bazart, went through them.
The lawyers started to listen to the subpoenaed tapes in preparation for turning them over, and then Bazard told me, oh my God, we've got a huge gap in one of the tapes.
The tape in question was the first recorded conversation between the president and his chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, after Nixon's men broke into the Democrats' headquarters. At the exact moment they turned to Watergate, their voices were obliterated by a hum lasting 18.5 minutes. Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Woods, said she must have erased the tape by accident while transcribing it. She had kept her foot on the tape recorder's pedal control while answering the telephone. The prosecutors asked her to reenact her story.
She started to pretend she was typing, and I said, okay, now the phone is wrong. What did you do? And she supposedly hit the wrong button on the machine and reached back for the telephone. And as she reached back, her foot came off the pedal, and I was quite shocked because she wasn't reaching that far. And I must admit, I kind of lost my cool, and I, in a rather elevated voice, said, your foot has just come off the pedal. And of course the machine stopped, which meant it was not erasing. She got very flustered but said, well, it's different in my office. It didn't happen this way in my office. It's different in my office. I said to the judge, well, perhaps, Your Honor, we could adjourn to Miss Woods' office.
In her White House office, Rosemary Woods was watched by the special prosecutors and a photographer as she desperately tried to keep her foot on the pedal and her hand on the phone.
She had to reach way over, far beyond. I don't know if you ever saw the comic book Plastic Man. Beyond anything Plastic Man could have achieved.
Even in the photograph, you can literally see she's holding on like this, and her knuckles are white as she's reaching for the phone. Now, any normal human being, of course, would have slid their chair, which was on wheels, to the phone and picked it up.
It was very hurtful. I remember Newsweek had that photograph.
I don't know why we should never have allowed Newsweek into the White House. I mean, there was just one bungle after another.
I don't think anybody could possibly believe that she did it. The question still remains, who did do it? Who was she covering for?
Well, we had gone from the technicians in the bowels of the White House over a several-week period up to the Chief of Staff, Alexander Haig.
Ben Venisti, the prosecutor, was asking me with foam coming out of his mouth who had wiped out the 18 and a half minutes, and I said, well, it may have been a sinister force. The American press, who was in the room, ran out and said, Haig claims that demons erased the tape, and I started getting letters from demonologists all over the world.
Unfortunately for the White House, the technical report was more down to earth. The gap had been caused not by a foot pedal, but by hand.
The scientists found that someone had attempted to erase the tape. They had taken 8 separate tries at it. There were 3 people who had access to the tape and the tape recorder. One of them was Rosemary Woods, who used that tape recorder regularly, knew how to use it.
There's no one more loyal, no one more honest, no one more efficient than Rosemary Woods, and I am utterly confident that she did not erase anything.
The second was Steve Bull, a subordinate assistant to the president, who would not have taken 8 tries to erase the tape. And the third was the president himself.
Did you want to find some other things?
While the prosecutors never charged anyone with causing the 18-and-a-half-minute gap, the episode was damaging to Nixon. But the president had taken a step to get things under control. To take charge of the aggressive prosecution team, he had appointed a new man, a conservative Texas lawyer, Leon Jaworski.
The more I looked into him, the more I felt that we had a fellow that would be objective, not be looking for, or not be influenced by partisan issues, but more importantly by the issues of the national interest.
We were not particularly disposed to any new leader, much less someone who was so an establishment figure as Leon Jaworski, someone handpicked by the president and Alexander Haig to perpetrate the biggest fix of all time.
In order to have satisfied the staff, I would have had to resort to the extremest of measures that would have embarrassed, humiliated, castigated, indicted, and everything else Richard Nixon.
Jaworski made it clear that what would happen to the president was not for his staff to decide. Then the unerased White House tapes were delivered to the special prosecutors.
We waited with a tape recorder in my office, listened in what was an extraordinary sort of eavesdropping into the Oval Office.
We tore off our headsets and determined that Leon Jaworski had to hear this.
He came in and said, Colonel, I think we're at a point where you're going to want to listen to something. And I said, all right. And so I stepped on where the machinery was set up.
Jaworski heard Nixon and his aides plotting how to testify falsely without risking a charge of perjury.
Say you forgot, didn't you? Sure. Sorry. But you can't be here very high-risk and perjury situation. You can't remember, I can't recall, can't answer that.
He was schooling him on how to keep from telling the truth and at the same time not commit perjury, and I knew then that there was some involvement.